Hello and welcome to the Podquest of Bread. My name is Henry Conley. His sole purpose is to get reelected. Trump's leadership was rudderless, and his attention span is like a minus number. These are direct quotes from Dr. Anthony Fauci, referring to Trump's leadership during the COVID-19 outbreak. I want to talk about this because, of course, if you've been paying attention, today it came out that Donald Trump intentionally hid the severity of COVID-19 from the American public. Even back in December, he was getting intelligence briefings talking about how serious of a matter this was. Up until February 7th, he was talking about how serious it is, how it's worse than the yearly flu, and how it's far more deadly. He called the virus amazing in private talks and interviews. He talked about how stunned by it and blown away by it he was, how nervous with it he was, but how he wanted to hide the severity of it from the American public to avoid causing a panic. Now, anybody that watches this podcast knows that I generally like to analyze Donald Trump's actions through the eyes of him being a fascist, because as pointed out on many other leftist podcasts, Donald Trump has checked off all 14 characteristics of being a fascist. He's checked them all off. The same checklist that multiple other fascists throughout history have checked off. The same checklist that they all seem to follow to a T. And we'll get on that in a minute. But what I want to talk about first is Donald Trump intentionally lying to the American people, intentionally hiding the severity of a global worldwide pandemic. That was a redundant sentence. I apologize. A global pandemic from the American people. The severity of this. Now, don't get me wrong. I know Donald Trump's been lying to the American people since before he was elected to office. I mean, anybody with a functioning brain knows that he's been lying to the American people. Mexico will pay for that wall. Yeah, okay, we did. See, here's the thing to understand. Donald Trump hiding something as severe as this goes above the lies that he typically tells. Donald Trump's traditional lies are ones that help him move his platform forward and help him move the things that he wants to do forward. But this is a lot different. This lie is severely far worse than lying about who's going to fund a wall or what putting tariffs on imports is going to do. This is a lie that's led to over 187,000 people dead, millions having been infected with this virus. This lie is one that is actually far more detrimental to the American people. Donald Trump hiding the severity of a virus like this from the American people is very comparable to the whole Watergate scandal, where Richard Nixon hid what he knew about that from the American people. But there's a key difference here that I want to touch on before I get into what was trending on Twitter today and how it relates to fascism. When Richard Nixon intentionally lied to the American people and hid his involvement and his knowledge from the American people, the Republican Party as a whole, the Congress, the Republican Congress went to Richard Nixon and said, you have to resign. We cannot back you. You have to get out of office. See, they stood for their image right then and there. But Donald Trump, and I covered this just after the GOP convention, Donald Trump is the Republican Party now. He is their image. He is what they want to be. So this is where I say this is going to be different. Instead of the Republican Party in the eyes or in the attempts to cover their image and to protect their image, going and removing Richard Nixon and forcing him to resign, because Donald Trump is the Republican Party's image, I don't think we'll see the same thing here occur. Now, today on Twitter, there were multiple things trending. Impeach him again. Resign Trump. Remove Trump. Out of those three things that were trending, only one of them is applicable. And this is why I'll say that. Calling for a new impeachment on Donald Trump this close to the election is literally going to do nothing. And in fact, calling for a new impeachment of Donald Trump this close to the election in the midst of a pandemic where Congress should be focusing on something else like helping the American people is a little selfish. It's a little wrong. If you really want to get rid of Donald Trump that bad, then you need to be out there making the calls and phone banking to get your candidate in the White House. Resign Trump. This one was the worst one that I saw trending. And the reason that it was the worst one that I saw trending was because to call for Trump to resign shows how little you understand about the man who is currently occupying the White House. What you don't understand about Donald Trump is this. Being that he has checked off all 14 characteristics of a fascist ruler, all 14 characteristics of someone who forms a fascist regime, you need to view Trump as a fascist. You need to look at him as you would any other fascist in history. Calling for Donald Trump to resign would mean that he has a moral integrity to recognize that he has failed the American people and that he would take that moral integrity to use it for good. But the problem is Donald Trump has no moral integrity. He has no good in him. Fuck, I don't even know if he realizes how immoral he is because he elevates himself so high. So to call for him to resign is absolutely incomprehensible because you would have to have him acknowledge his failure. See, fascists don't resign from positions. Fascists don't voluntarily step down. Fascists don't just sit there and go, man, I screwed up. I better do what's right for the people. Because for fascists, the only thing that they seek to gain and retain is power. Asking a fascist to step down from power is absolutely crazy. And that's why those two trends were absolutely laughable. I don't mean to be that guy, but there were a ton of people spreading this, and it needs to be talked about. The hashtag / the trend that was going, that was applicable, was remove Trump. Remove Trump. It's a lot more direct. It represents action. Action by the American people. We're not talking about action as physically going into the White House and removing him, because that would be suicide. You would not make it anywhere close to him. In fact, he'd run back to the bunker like a bitch. What I'm talking about when I say remove Trump as being the best thing that was trending today was the actions that can be taken to remove Trump. Now, again, when I say this following little bit, this is not an endorsement of any candidate, okay? You've seen my candidate on this podcast. I interviewed him a few weeks ago. But what I'm going to say, if you want to remove Trump from office, it can start at the ballot box. You can start there. You can cast your vote for Joe Jorgensen or Biden or Howie Hawkins. You can cast your vote for Mark Charles. You could do whatever you want. But that would also, again, rely on Donald Trump's moral integrity to recognize that he lost an election. That would rely on Donald Trump accepting the results of an election he is already contesting. Characteristic number 14 on the list of things that identify a fascist. Donald Trump's not going to accept the results of the election. So, your removal of Trump begins at the ballot box. Really, it should be beginning right now with the 60 days of civil disobedience, the 60 days of nonviolent protest. But for many, it will begin at the ballot box. But removing Trump needs to take another step. Removing Trump from office will require us being in the streets, require us demanding he leave, require us shutting down the very systems that enable him, shutting down the powers that enable him, that back him. Removing Trump from office, because he is a fascist, is going to be the hardest fight to get a president out of the White House ever. I'm talking literally just about him serving one term. I don't want to discuss how hard it will be to remove him from office if he serves a second term. But if he loses this election, removing Donald Trump from office will be the hardest fight that the American people will ever do to uphold democracy and the very foundations of this country. So discussing removing Trump right now is a very smart idea. So when you're out there on Twitter tonight, or Facebook, or Instagram, or whatever your preferred media is, instead of saying resign Trump, instead of having that trend, instead of saying impeach him again and having that trend, start the talk on removing a fascist from the White House. Because that's what we, the people, have to do. We have to remember that in the end, if Donald Trump loses the election, it is we, the people, who must demand the action to take him out of the White House. If he can contest this as much as he wants, but we, the people, maintain control. And that's the whole point of the movement right now, is bringing power back to the people. So we must use our power, which we are now remembering we have, to hold him accountable. Because again, he has no moral compass. He has no moral integrity. It is we, the people, with the moral compass and the moral integrity to recognize what democracy is, and to recognize what fascism is, and to recognize Donald Trump as the fascist ruler he is. All the hubbub today was about him lying to the American people. He's lied to us for years. All the hubbub today was about him actually admitting how dangerous the virus was. We knew he was thinking that. All the hubbub was him talking about downplaying the virus. We knew he was doing that. This should not be news to people. This should not be a shock to the system for people. And what we as the people need to discuss is how we're going to get him out of office. You need to be reaching out to the powers that be. You need to be reaching out to your local senator, your local representative, and asking them, if Donald Trump contests this election, if he loses this election and refuses to leave, what will you do for the people to get him out of office? Then you need to reflect on yourself and say, what are you going to do to ensure that he is out of office? If we have to shut the system down, then we shut the system down. If we have to take the streets, then we take the streets. Because radical action is the fundamental key to preserving democracy in the United States, so we can begin to have a discussion on the things that we really need to discuss. Those things that I said need to be discussed instead of impeachment. So, with that in mind, remove Trump. Remove the fascist. Remove the rudderless leader sitting in the White House. Stay beautiful, people.